You have an album that's coming out on Friday, special edition album coming out on Friday.
Yeah.
So you've been doing more, or at least concentrating more on music than acting.
Not really.
Lately? Because I feel like I see you on television
I've,
constantly, so I don't understand how much...
I think I had a couple people come up to me at some of the earlier shows 5 or 6 years ago and were like, oh my gosh, are you not going to work as an actor anymore? That's the love of my life, man.
It is.
I will want to do that to the day I die. The thing I found so interesting about music is not only am I a huge fan of music and live music, but for me, with songwriting, it was just another way to tell a story.
Yeah.
And what I've loved about acting is getting together with a group of actors and a director and a cinematographer, and what's the best way we can tell this story? It's very similar to get together with a band and a producer like Jude Cole. And what's the best way to tell this story? The big difference for me is... on my best day, I'm not Jack Bauer, but that was a character, and a lot of people will know me from that. The songs that I write are actually very personal songs, and so that took a minute to get used to because I spent most of my life being very private, or trying to be, and all of a sudden I find myself in front of 500 strangers singing a song of the first time I got my heart broken, or this or that.
But do they know necessarily? Like,
yeah, because I tell them.
Right.
I make a point of explaining kind of where I was at when I wrote the song and what I was going through. And once I leaned into that, the response that I had from an audience was just really extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I think on a good night, when you finish a show, whatever preconceived notion you might have had of the audience and whatever preconceived notion they might have had of you, if by the end of the show everybody's walking away realizing that we've got a lot more in common than we might have thought, that's a great night. And so, but
I would have to imagine it's pretty therapeutic too, right? To like kind of live this existence where you're like, no, I have to keep everything private. They want to put articles out about me. Everything in my life, I'll keep over here and I'll keep away from everybody. And when you can figure out a way to kind of not break those walls down, let people into your life and realize that, oh, this is actually a good thing because people are going through shit on their own.
It certainly is cathartic, and I would have to say these 2 albums that I've made are the closest thing I have to a journal. But no, the experience has been amazing. But having said that, I think we did 150 shows last year, but we also did Designated Survivor.
I know, that's what when I'm thinking you have this you have this series, you're the star of a series.
And we go back to Europe and we'll tour 30 dates there. And then I'll start shooting a film with Stephen Hopkins, who I did the original series of 24 with. So I'm very excited about that.
So you just love working. You love being on the move.
I have found for me that the downtime is when I get in trouble. And if I can just stay busy enough, then stuff kind of goes better for me. And I love what I do. I've always said this. I'm the luckiest person I know. I've been able to do what I love doing for a career, and 99.9% of the population doesn't.
Yeah.
And so I will never take that for granted. I'm grateful for those opportunities. And with regards to music, I love the band that I play with. And again, the experiences that I've had with the audiences that have been kind enough to come out to our shows has just really been extraordinary and moving for me.
Is there a control thing too, where when you are doing your music, ultimately, as much as you're working with a band and you're working with a producer, you're responsible for it. It's your stuff. Whereas in a movie, a TV series, you're responsible for the acting, but that's more of a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, but I mean, both are team sports. They really are.
Yeah.
I certainly don't have the musical knowledge of someone like Jude Cole, who produced both of the records, and I certainly don't have the playing skills or the singing skills that he has. So I rely very heavily on other people, but you're absolutely right. I'm responsible for the finished product, and I have to either say, yes, this fairly represents what I wanted to accomplish.
Right.
But I have to say, I felt the same way about Designated Survivor and 24, and both shows I was producers on. So, one of the lucky things for me is my career has evolved over the years. I've been given a little more room to have some input into what that final product is. And that's something that I've been grateful for. Because in that circumstance, look, if everybody hates it, You can still stand there and go, well, I'm sorry that everybody hates it, but I liked it for these reasons, and this is why I made those choices.
Right.
Whereas in early days, you kind of are left up to the wind, to see which way it blows, and hopefully, between the editors and the directors in the studio, that you all had a shared vision for it.
Have you ever had the experience where you're like, okay, I know I did a good job acting, the script looks good, I think this is going to be great, and then you go and see it and it's a stinker?
I've had that experience more than once, and it wasn't that I thought, oh, my acting was great or anything like that, but you put together a great cast.
Yeah.
The script is great because it attracted all of these great people, and you've got a great director, and the studio's behind you, and for whatever reason,
it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work, and that's a chemistry thing. If we could all figure out how to handle that or manage that or put that kind of in a bottle, it would be easy. Every film you would ever make would be successful.
They'd all be great, right?
But it's an amazing thing to see when it works and trying to figure out why. Like 24, I don't think any of us expected, certainly when we started, that it would ascend to the kind of show that it became. Having said that, there are other projects too that we just dumbfounded about why they didn't work.
Right.
What's most important, I think, as an actor or as an artist, is to be honest enough with yourself to be able to look at something and go, that did work, or that didn't work, and learn from that.
Yeah, are you good at when something doesn't work, whether it's your fault or not, specifically if it's not on you, if you just know, like, okay, the pieces, everybody was doing their jobs, the pieces didn't come together this time. Are you good at admitting that, or are you a guy who, like, takes it on himself?
I would think I'm quite pragmatic about, understanding. Because if you can't learn from something that wasn't successful, you're in real trouble.
Right.
And so I think the more honest you can be about trying to understand the reasons or variables that led to something being unsuccessful or not working, I think that's absolutely paramount to one's progression in what they do.
What was it like when 24 did what 24 did? And by that, I mean, you'd already done iconic stuff. Like, you already had your boxes checked off where you had your stuff that people will remember you forever because of this, because of that. People had their favorites. But then you start doing something like 24, and this entire new wave of people not only has you, I mean, people still, I'm sure, see you on the street and call you Jack Bauer.
Yep. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most exciting times because I had gone through, careers longer than I care to mention. But you go through moments where, certainly when I was young, Stand By Me, Young Guns, Lost Boys, Flatliners, A Few Good Men. I had a lot of films in a row that were very successful. And because I was so young, I just took for granted, okay, this is going to be the rest of your life and this is wonderful.
This is how this works.
Right. And then I got bit in the ass by life and had 10 years where a lot of films didn't work. And so 24 kind of pulled me out of that. And after doing a few things that I actually really cared about, that for whatever reason didn't find the success one hopes for, to have 24 take off the way it did, I was finally in a position where I was not going to take that for granted. And so it was really exciting. And the fans that ended up appreciating that show were really hardcore fans. They went in full boat, 100%.
God,
and it was exciting every time you would go to work in front of the camera. You knew who you were working for because you'd meet people on the street and you'd think about them. And like, I remember at the beginning of season 2, I shot a bad guy in the office of my superior, and he was freaking out saying, "Oh my God, what have you done? What have you done?" And I turn around and I say, "I need a hacksaw because I'm going to cut his head off." And I knew the second we had that line and that scene structured like that the people that were enjoying the show were going to enjoy that moment. And so those moments became a lot of fun and exciting to do.
How do you deal with like expectations of success, right? Because I think, coming from the family that you do, getting into acting, you're, just kind of getting in and making a living. Some people might see that as success, but based on your family, you might have these kind of grander expectations. In the same way for music, when you succeed as much as you do in acting, do you have these things in your head where success is now defined as this unattainable thing?
Success has to be defined by the enjoyment you get from what you're doing. It has to be. You can't put a dollar amount on it. You can't try and rationalize 500,000 people enjoyed this, so therefore it's a success, and 499,000 didn't enjoy it, therefore it's a failure. If you try and quantify or qualify this by numbers, you're just going to be let down.
Yeah.
The truth is, each job and each experience has its positives and negatives, and one in life has to try and figure out how to make it more positive than negative. Storytelling, there's always going to be challenges in storytelling. And I don't care if you're just sitting around with a bunch of friends in a bar, or you're making a film, or you're writing a song. But if that's the root of what you love doing is storytelling, then make it about that. And don't try and put number values on everything. And that took me a long time to learn.
Yeah.
So it's again, it's a very kind of selfish thought as I'm articulating it now. But if you value success versus failure and how you qualify that based on your personal experience and what you managed to learn and what you managed to get from that, whether it's developing a new relationship with another actor who you loved working with, or whether it's playing in a town that you've never been to before and you create a rapport with an audience. All of those things. You write a song, and then all of a sudden by the time you finish it for the record, you're like, man, I wasn't so sure about that song, but boy, do I love it now. Those are the great moments that you have.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get there, I'm sure that can also preserve your sanity, because you are kind of in control of that. You're not comparing yourself to other people. You're not at the whim of somebody else's decision making.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword. There's moments where you've got a song and you're so excited about it, and you start to play it and it sounds great, and then you start to record it, and then for whatever reason it just lays dead on the track, and it just doesn't have the kind of life that you were hoping for, and then that song doesn't make the record.
Yeah.
So it's always peaks and valleys, and I think at some point in your life you realize that that's what it is, and the sooner you accept it, the more fun you'll have.
Speaking of doing things that he enjoys, our producer Travis, who's in the room right there. Travis, come in so Kiefer can see you. He is
glasses on.
He is the biggest Kiefer Sutherland fan that I've ever met in my life. Yes, and I've known him for over 10 years. I've never known a period of time where he wasn't. You're his absolute favorite actor, favorite everything. I would say you come up in conversation on a fairly regular basis.
Well, for that I apologize, but thank you very much, man.
Am I lying, Travis?
Absolute pleasure.
No, you're telling the truth. I was walking in, but I assume everything that you said was true.
Yeah, you're a big fan.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest.
That's very kind.
I think
very much.
I think the biggest.
Thank you very much.
And Travis asked if he could write questions. He doesn't, he's a producer.
But I'm not on the air that much, so I'm
He's not on the air that much, but I told him that, of course, if he's going to have the chance to talk to his hero.
Well, that's very sweet.
Why shouldn't he have the chance, right?
Absolutely. I hope I have the answers.
Yeah, me too.
Well, like I already said, I am very happy that you're here.
Thank you very much.
And I am fan numero uno.
That's cool.
Was it always your dream to be an actor?
No. From the time when I was a young kid, I wanted to be a veterinarian till I was about 11. And then my mom got me a guitar when I was 10. And I just took that guitar with me everywhere. And I played in a couple high school bands. And so music was something I was leaning towards. And then I did a play because I could play the violin. I was cast when I was 12 years old in a very big play because that was about the Lodz ghetto in Poland. And I had to play a violin piece at the top of the first act. And then I played one of the characters. And then I played a violin at the top of the second act and was one of the characters till I was killed. And that was my first acting job. And I was doing it I was the only kid in the cast. Everybody else was an adult. And it was the first time in my life where adults kind of treated me as an equal. And that was one of the most exciting times, especially for a 12-year-old. And then I saw my mother do a performance of Virginia Woolf, and it was the only thing that I had ever seen either of my parents do, because I grew up with my mother. And my father's films were all restricted for 18 and above, so I couldn't watch those. And so I knew he was an incredibly successful actor. I just didn't see any of the work until I was much older. But I saw my mother in a production of Virginia Woolf. She played Martha. And somewhere between the first and second act, she stopped being my mother. And I thought that was like the coolest magic trick I'd ever seen. And that really piqued my interest. So that really around 12, 13 years old, that's when acting became of real interest to me. And I think certainly at that time, I was very aware of my father's success and my mother's success. And I didn't really want to walk in those footsteps or shadow. But I fell in love with it in a way that I just kept kind of plodding on. And then both my parents very graciously let me find my own way. They didn't try and manhandle my young career. And so I made some mistakes, but I learned really quickly from those. And so it took a little time.
We've had your father in before. He was in here.
Oh, yeah?
And you know what he did that was very, very impressive? Without us, we had no idea to ask. He just presented this information and then proved that he could fart on command.
I was going to just say that.
Yeah. He said he's one of the great, I think, flatulators might have been the word that he used.
He used to do it to embarrass the kids. I've got 3 younger brothers and a twin sister, and he used to do it in elevators. And the worst part about him, the way he would do it, is because this guy's actually taken time to work on it.
Yeah.
So he can throw a fart. And that's hard to do. He can actually fart himself, but make it sound like it came from over there.
It's incredible.
And oh gosh, it used to make my sister cry. And but yeah, he's got a lot of other really great talents as well that go beyond that.
Was that not a talent that you were able to pick up on?
No, it was something that I've desperately tried my entire life not to do.
That's too bad. That's too bad. Did you have another question, Travis?
You'd mentioned 24 earlier, and I've been a fan since way back when 24 was on. And I think that there's a little Jack Bauer in all of us. How much Jack Bauer was really Kiefer?
Well, I think, like you said, there was a lot of want.
Right.
Gosh, I wish I was this guy. Gosh, I wish I had this moral compass. Gosh, I wish I had his bravery. Gosh, I wish I could do all of these things. The things that I can tell you that are absolutely between me and Jack Bauer, we look the same. We run exactly the same speed. All of the physical stuff is there. But what I absolutely loved about the character was that he was never going to win.
Right.
It was just, and there are people in our society that take on the jobs that we don't want that are going to, more times than not fail. And how do you win when you're confronted with a situation that you let 10 people die to save 100? That's not winning.
Yeah.
There's no winning in that. And so I had such reverence and respect for that character because of the sacrifices that he was willing to put himself in for, based on what he thought his responsibility was to his country, to people, to innocent victims, and that doesn't mean he didn't make mistakes, and that that's part of that game. But I really did feel very strongly that this was a guy who was going to try and do what he thought was the best thing.
Right.
And that at times it wasn't, and that he was going to, and that created for great storytelling, great drama.
Yeah.
But no, I would have to say the character and I are very different, but there's aspects of that character that I admire deeply.
Right.
Yeah.
You always hear about some of the legends of Kiefer Sutherland on the internet and whatnot. And I need to know if this one's true, because it's been one of my favorite stories for a very, very long time.
Okay.
I'm an action figure collector, an adult.
Yeah, it's true.
An adult action figure collector.
And it's, so many years have passed now that I don't think I'll get in too much trouble for it. But they had made an action figure of Jack Bauer, and they had sent it to me for approval. And I was doing a film with Michael Douglas at the time in Toronto. Mm-hmm. So they sent it to me, and I thought it looked great. And I said, wow, that's actually pretty cool. And so I phoned the people back in Los Angeles and said, yeah, no, that's you've got my approval. And they were like, oh, great, okay. And that was it. That's all they said.
Okay.
And so me and a friend of mine took it out drinking, and we took some really bad pictures of the Jack Bauer doll in like a bottle of whiskey, and then we got him into the frilly drinks, and then we lit him on fire.
And luckily you had doused him in alcohol.
And, man, he burned. And I think we filmed that too. And he just ended up a puddle of wax and clay, and got a call the next day. I was like, so glad you liked it. So we need you to send it back. And I'm like, what? And they said, we need you to send it back. It's the prototype. And I went, well, why didn't anybody tell that to me when you gave it to me? I mean, it should have been the first thing. We need this for your approval, and then send it back immediately.
Yeah, it's a prototype.
But they didn't say anything, so it took a whole nother year for the doll to come out, because I didn't realize they spent a whole year making it.
So much money lost.
They had to create a brand new prototype.
And yes, and whoever had to do the prototype, I think, was kind of pissed off, because it never looked as good as the first one I got.
You're like, I got pictures of the original.
And had I known, had I known, I certainly would never have done it. We just thought we were being funny.
Of course, that's the best part of the story, that it wasn't like you were being like shitty or malicious.
No,
it was just like,
thought we were being funny, and I feel really bad about it. And to the poor artist in Japan who has spent so long trying to make that doll, I am so sorry.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's hilarious. Travis, you have another question?
Do you keep in touch with any of the old crew, like Emilio Estevez or Chuck Sheen?
That's I see Emilio more than I do Charlie, and then Charlie's just
Chuck,
always busy. But Emilio, is writing and making his films. That I regret, kind of, because that film Young Guns 1, I don't get into what film I had as a favorite film, but it was absolutely, undoubtedly the most fun I've ever had making a film. And Emilio is one of the funniest guys I've ever met. And unfortunately, so you have this amazing kind of 3 or 4 month experience with people, and you feel like you're going to be friends forever, but everybody's got families, they get other jobs, it takes them out of town. And unfortunately, people grow apart. But my memories of Lou Diamond Phillips, Emilio Estevez, Charlie Sheen, Dermot Mulroney, Casey Shamosko is one of the funniest guys on the planet. We had the time of our lives on that film. And so we don't get to spend as much time as certainly I would like. But when we do see each other, we tend to try and make up for it.
Do you want to wrap up with one, Travis?
Can I have one more question?
Yeah, of course.
You were talking earlier about films or projects that don't work, or you think they're going to work, but they don't. Dark City is one of my favorite movies.
One of mine, too.
How frustrating is that when it doesn't land?
Well, I mean, there's a very simple explanation for that. I mean, Siskel and Ebert, and I think Alex Proyas deserve this. They replaced Metropolis in their film school with Dark City. It was a 15-minute standing ovation at Cannes, reviewed across the board as really one of the most innovative, inventive science fiction films of its time. New Line Cinema was owned by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers had a film coming out called Matrix. They were too close in line with each other, and they had invested a huge amount of money in that film. And Keanu Reeves is awesome, and that's a great film. It was one of those unfortunate things that they were completed around the same time. They had very similar looks in the timeless aspect of that production. And Warner Brothers told New Line, you're going to take a back seat on this one.
It eventually found its audience, though.
And it did, and over time, and I actually believe, certainly with the way technology has changed in the last 20 years, it is out there for people to find and things like that. But at that moment, it was, you think, oh my God, thank God I'm in something that critics are liking and people are liking. This is going to go all right. And then it's like, 8 theaters, and not one in New York.
Perfect.
That's not good. So, there's so many circumstances, so many factors that lead to something being successful and not successful that are out of your hands. I was very proud to have worked with Alex Proyas, Rufus Sewell, just such a fantastic cast. And I was very proud of the film. And at the end of the day, maybe at that point in my life, at the age of 29, I wasn't at a place where that was enough.
Right.
I absolutely am now, and I'm enjoying my life a lot more as a result of that.
Want more Jim and Sam? Catch up with full episodes and interviews from celebrity guests anytime on demand using the SiriusXM app.